welcome to another video. Now this is something that a few people noticed in one of my other videos, the sideboard video. It's the magnetic catches that I used in that sideboard. So we're going to be using these little rare earth magnets to make a catch or a magnetic pull to keep the door closed, and it's really discreet. It's a really good looking catch. The other sort of options you got in that type of cabinet are catches like these for a magnetic catch, where you screw them into the cabinet and screw this part to the door, and they're just a bit ugly, and that's not the worst thing about them. The worst thing about them is when you close the actual cabinet door, you get like a nasty click sound as it closes, and it sounds really sort of harsh. It's not got a quality feel to it. So when we've shown you how to do the magnetic catch using these, you'll just see how nice and quality that closing sound is and feel of the door when you close it. So I'll show you how I go about setting them into the frames and into the doors and how it all works. So to show you, I'm just going to use 2 blocks of wood to represent the frame and the door. But you can use your imagination that one of these is the door and one is the frame. So when I'm making the shaker style frame, I have a plan so you know where the doors are going to go. So at that point you can mark in that frame where you're going to put the magnets. So I put the magnets top and bottom of each door. So you'd imagine this is the sill of the frame. So shaker frame, this is a sill and this would be the corner. So what I would do is find a pencil, come in from the edge of the corner, so around so I've come in 35mm because generally I use a 70mm door size section, so you'll be in the centre of that piece of timber. 35mm. So this will be the face of your cabinet. It's the outside of the cabinet. That's the edge that goes against the door. And I set a gauge up to gauge where the magnet's going to go in the frame. So with thickness material like this, you've got plenty of scope to put the magnets where you wish. When it starts getting thinner with the material, you have to be a bit careful and offset the magnets to suit the material. But what we're aiming for is 2 magnets, so like this, opposite each other, and we want when the door's closed them to be sort of 4mm offset like that, so that they've got a pull to get back in line like this. So when it's hitting the stop, it should be in that position there. So that means this magnet here, the top one, which would be the frame, so if that was the frame there, the magnet in the door needs to be sat out from it to offset by 4mm. So in the frame, I will set that 2mm towards the inside of the cabinet. So if we find the centre using a gauge like this, and then just mark in 2mm offset from that. And if we set the gauge to that 2mm mark, and just if you can see me doing this on camera, just use the gauge like a bradawl, so to pierce a hole in the timber, and that gives us a point to put the drill into to drill a hole. So you can do that for all your frame sections that have a door within them. Go around, mark in from the edge where you want the magnet to be, and then bradawl them holes and just drill them out. So if you grab a appropriately sized drill, I think these magnets are 12mm, so I've got a 12mm drill. It wants to be quite a tight fit, so it doesn't want to be too tight that you have to force the magnet into place, but you don't want it loose that they're going to fall out quite easily. So yeah, good fitting drill bit to suit the magnets. And then just locate the centre point of your drill into that hole, and drill a hole. The depth of the magnet, these are 5mm magnets, so you want about a 7mm hole, so you've got 2mm to cover over the top. So I'm lucky with this drill bit being like a carbide tipped drill. It's got the carbide tip on the end, if I can get the camera to focus, is about the depth that I want for these magnets. So it's very easy to gauge that depth. Okay, so now the hole's drilled for the magnet, I'm going to set that in place with some filler and cap it over the top with that filler so that we can sand it back to keep it flush and paint over the top so you don't know anything's there, so it looks nice and clean. Now before we set it into place, I use a jig, just simple, a magnet set into the piece of timber like this, which is my frame magnet. So that is orientated with the north-south polar of the magnet to be my frame magnet as a reference. So if I sit these on here and try to put them that way around, you'll see that they resist polarity there, so they're the same polarity, so they need turning around to attract. So as I set my magnets into the frame piece, I'll keep them all in that orientation, push them in place, and do them that way around. And then I know when I come to do the door magnets that they're all going to attract each other, and you're not going to have a magnet set into your frame that's going to be pushing the door away rather than attracting it. So keep a piece of this handy, and you can reuse it throughout your career, really. So we'll mix up some filler and get this glued in place. I'm just using a 2-pack, using mahogany because that's what I've got the most of and don't really use a lot of. So for purposes of this video, we'll waste a bit of mahogany on this. So when I go to glue them in place, I just literally push a bit into the hole of the where the magnets go in. And I grab a pencil or a dowel or something like this, push it right to the bottom of the hole, and just make sure the outsides of the hole are coated well with the filler and squeeze the rest of it out. So I don't want any excess filler in that hole other than what's left by the radius on the end of the pencil and what's attached to the outsides of the wall. So it's quite clean. If there's too much left in there, you'll struggle to push the magnet in unless it's got a bit of clearance around the outside. So then check your frame magnet. So that's how you want your magnets orientated in the frame piece. So we'd check it on there and put it straight into the hole like that, slide it off. And then if we use something non-metallic to just push the magnet home, and you want to be just below the surface, so 0.5 mil to 1 mil or 2 below that surface. As long as you're not flush with it at all or above it, then that's perfect. Then you'll need something non-metallic, like a plastic filler knife, just to spread that filler back over the top. And that's the frame magnet set in place. We'll let that go off and then we'll sand it. With the door magnet, we're doing exactly the same principle. So this will be the face of the door. Now when we're setting this, we'll have the magnet in place from the frame. So when you fitted your door into the frame and it's all the gaps are correct, your door will sit over like this, and you can tick the mark over from the magnet onto the door. Don't measure it because there'll be a couple of mil out if you've allowed fitting gaps, etc. So make sure you tick that over. Just sort that filler out. Don't want to leave too much filler on, so just a very slight raise where the magnet is. That's just makes your life hard work for when you're sanding it off. So we've got a tick mark for where we put that magnet in the door. Square that over the face. And go back to our gauge here. If we gauge the line from the face, the same as the frame, and then measure from that gauge point 4 mil outwards. that's where we want to put our magnet in the door, so it's 4mm further towards the outside of the cabinet. And it just gives you a nice gentle pull. If they're just 1mm offset, you don't get enough there's not enough strength in the magnet when they're virtually aligned to keep the door closed nicely. 4mm offset just gives you a nice bit of strength. And not real nice feel to the resistance of the magnet when you go to open the door. So we'll drill that hole. And set the magnet again, the same process. So just a bit of filler into the hole, clean it out so the filler is attached to the outside, so it's going to stick it in all the way around, but there's not too much left in there. Grab our frame magnet again. So we've got to remember our frame is like this. So this is the door, this is the frame. So these magnets want to go in the door that way around. So if we just use that, pop it in the door, we know that we're going to get an attraction between the two. So the filler we've put in the hole that's now around the outside of the magnets will attract to this filler, and it creates quite a good lock. That magnet's not going to come out. That's all you need. You don't need to glue them in, just the filler holds them in. Not too much on there, make our lives easy. So that's the two magnets set into the corresponding parts. If you're doing a stained job, you can do the same process and use a pellet. So if you use like a super glue, you can glue a plug-in that matches the grain of the timber you're using, and you can hide the magnet behind that, or just leave them exposed, or use the filler. The silver magnet doesn't actually look too bad if you just leave that flushed completely with the door and the frame. It looks a lot better than a standalone magnetic catch like that, just having that silver disc showing in the frame. So it's still a better alternative even if you're staining, but it works best if you're doing a painted cabinet. You can paint straight over the top of this, and it's pretty much invisible. Okay, so while the filler goes off, on the shaker frames, quite often the carcass isn't flush with the face frame all the way around, so you might have to install a small block on the back as a stop piece to install the stops to. So what I do is just a small piece of timber like this, and screw it to the head, because the sill is normally flush with the face frame, and then the head of the shaker style cabinet returns up to the carcass. So one of these screwed to the back, so this is the frame piece, screwed to the back of the frame, and flush with the inside edge where that magnet's gone. Screw that in place, and that can take the stop for the doors. Okay, so that's sort of the finished article that you end up with. And what that piece is going to do is it's just hold the stop that catches the door while the magnets pull on it. So what I use is these little glass blocks. I think they're sold as from Hayfully. They're just little zinc die cast blocks, very discreet, very small. And then I take there's a black plastic front that comes on them, so flip that off, then attach a little rubber bumper stop to the face of it, and they're like a dome-shaped rubber bumper, and stick that on, and they're the perfect door stops. So what that block's going to do there is just take that screw from that block, so it gives you a bit of depth to the face frame for you to be able to screw that into place. So that's the purpose of that. If you finish your carcass flush with the internal size of the face frame, then you don't need to put a block like this on, because you can screw this straight to the edge of the carcass. If you're really clever, the edge of your face frame could have a rebaited strip on the back with a 2mm allowance or whatever for the thickness of this rubber bumper, and then you don't need to see any of these. You can just have that rebaited strip at the opening end, so the magnet end of the door for these to stick onto, and then you've got a nice discreet way of holding the door closed. So it's important to have the rounded rubber bumpers. So this is what they look like on the sheet. So when you take one off, get one that's loose. They've got like a rounded tip. I like that because the door can have like different thicknesses where the grain is, and if that bit where you install that bumper stop has had the grain eroded away or is a bit thicker, then the door can sometimes sit slightly out, so a fraction of a mil in the wrong place. So I usually screw these on 1/2 mil, so the door sits 1/2 mil flush when you initially shut it. And then if you get a really sharp chisel, you can pare the top of this rubber bumper off until you get the door sitting at exactly the right depth you need it to. So there's a tiny bit of adjustment there for you if you need it, which is quite handy. And that's the sort of difference between a really nice piece and one that's just got a few little bits of imperfections. You know, that tiny bit of fettling to make it sit absolutely perfectly is the difference between the quality we're talking about and just your bog standard cabinet. I'll try and get a link in the description for all the components that I use to get these magnet catches working. The filler's gone off now, so we can sand that back. I always use a piece of sandpaper attached to, I think this is a bit of birch ply, but you can use MDF or something flat, something that's not going to follow the humps and hollows of the wood, the grain, and you can keep a really nice sharp square edge, because quite often your magnet will be right next to a joint into the timber, so you don't want to be taking any edges off the timber with an orbital sander or anything like that. So something like this, and make sure you keep it dead flat on the wood, and that's when it helps not to have put too much filler on, because it's only a few strikes with the sandpaper and you're back to the wood and it's nice and smooth. So you have six very short strikes with that, and it's pretty much flush there. I wouldn't go an awful lot more than that. I know it's tempting to get it so you get a perfect circle of filler, but as soon as you do that, you then mix in the different densities of material. So you've got quite a hard filler that likes to sand, so it likes to be removed, and then you've got soft grain of wood that doesn't. So if you go any further than that with your sanding, what you tend to get is a ring where the filler is, whereas if you leave a tiny bit on the surface of the wood around it, then you get a nice, smooth, perfectly invisible filled joint. So that's what it should look like roughly. So there's no steps in this, but the filler's still sort of filling the grain of the parts around the magnet. Sand the piece that's acting as the door. So this will be on the top of the door or the bottom of the door. Same principle, piece of sandpaper on the board, and you do the whole door sides with this, and you get a real nice straight, sharp edge to your door. There we go, sanded that off nice and flush. So that will be the door. This is your frame, and then when you've hinged them together, so that will be your frame piece, they will come together, and then the magnets will try and attract to each other. Obviously they're going to be 2 to 3 mil apart, or 1.5 mil, depending on what you like you set your gaps at. But you've got a a bit of attraction there to get them to come together, and you've got an offset so that when they're flush, there's a pull against the door, which is nice when you open it. There's a nice bit of resistance there, and it also helps you keep your door flat in the opening if you've got a slight twist in a door, or your materials are going to settle down over time. Having that pull with the magnets helps to encourage it to stay where you want it to be. So at that point then you need to put the stop in place. So like I said before, if you use the same thickness material for the frame as the door, it's dead easy to set this up. You literally hold the stop in place so that the front of the magnet is sort of 1/2 mil into the frame piece, and then just put that screw in place there. Excuse the real quality spanner, but I like to use an adjustable spanner on these items now, because it just holds them nice and square and stops it from spinning. And they're so small you can't really use your fingers, it's a bit fiddly. So if you use a spanner, it keeps it all in line for you. And I just use a 3 or a 3.5 mil screw. I usually use a 3 mil screw. I've got a 3.5 mil available now, and just screw that into place. Again, use the spanner. It helps to keep it square as you turn the screw on that last quarter turn to tighten it. It tends to twist the little square bracket, so using a spanner to hold it square keeps it all in line. There we have it. There is the brackets and door configuration. We have the bracket that stops the door in place. You can see, get the camera angle right, it just dips over the thickness of this material, like I said before, so we can trim this back to let the door in to the exact amount we want it, so it's flush. We stick this in the vise. I wouldn't trim these stops back or put them on in even until everything's painted and you're doing your final assembly. So this is our door piece. It'll be hinged over here, and it comes into place like that, and is held by the magnet. So as you can see, if I hold it this way up, I don't know if you can see that actually. There's a very slight step in it here. It's around, it's probably about 1/2 mil, so that's absolutely perfect for what I intended. So what you do then is get your freshly sharpened chisel and just take the nose off of the rubber bump stops using almost like a sawing action, and it does a nice clean cut, and then just retry it until you cut enough off that the door sits flush or exactly where you want it to. See there, it wasn't, I didn't take hardly anything off that, and we were actually there. So that's how I adjust it so that it sits absolutely flush. And when you look at it from further than about 3 inches away, you'd never know anything's gone onto it. So yeah, it still looks perfect. It's very discreet, and you've got a perfectly aligned door without trying to drill it absolutely spot on every time and hitting a bit of hard grain in it, flipping one way or the other, and putting the door out. So yeah, it's a good little tip to trim them down. If you do drill it in the wrong place, you've got enough movement within the bracket to drill sort of 4 more attempts, so you can do 2 to the left, front and back, and 2 to the right. So got plenty of opportunities to have a re-drill, try and get it in the right place. But I'd advise, coming halfway, 1/2 mil to the outside, and then trimming it off. So that's the basics of how I do the catch, and I'll just show you on the sideboard now the operation of it and how smooth it works and what it looks like in a finished piece. Before we go there, just sort of show you, or try and show you how much strength these magnets have got. They're quite strong. You know, there's enough strength there for that to be put a resistance on pulling them apart either way up. You know, it's holding its weight and moving it around. There is enough strength in that magnet to hold it together. I initially used to use I think it was a 4mm thick by 12 rare earth magnet, and they didn't have enough strength to pull the doors in. It did work, but you'd close the door and it'd bounce back open if you hit it too hard or anything. So the 12 by 5 are the perfect size magnet for this application. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description for you. Okay, so here we are at a finished piece to show you the magnets once it's been painted and finished. This is the sideboard that I made in a earlier video, so if you haven't seen that already, go and check that out. But we've got a magnet set into the top here. I don't know if I'll be able to focus the camera on the top there, but it's pretty much invisible. If you just catch the light right through there, you can see the circle on the top. There we go. I think you can probably pick that up on the screen now, but otherwise it's nigh on invisible. You wouldn't notice there unless you're really looking hard for it. And likewise, we've got the opposite magnet in the top there, and you can see the small catch or the door stop there that holds the door in position. So as you close it, push it to, it's just got a nice gentle, I don't know why the camera's not focusing here. It's just got a nice gentle pull as it gets near to where you want to be with the door. So from about 10mm out, it's pulling the door in. Now if you're making the carcass as a sealed unit, it actually works as a mechanism to stopping the door slamming, so you can throw the door shut as hard as you possibly can, and because the unit is sealed inside throughout, the air pressure of the door will not let that door slam, so it will always push shut and actually hold itself closed rather than bouncing open, unlike a lot of catches or cupboard doors. Equally, if you just push it too gently, it's got a nice closing action too. So at no speed when you're closing it does it slam the door or bounce back open. So in my view, it's the perfect catch, and it's got the advantage of looking nice as well. If you wanted to get rid of the little bump stops here on the bottom, you could put, like I said before, rebate this upright section here. So you had a small return coming this way throughout the whole length, and put the rubber bumpers into that rebate, and then you just have a bumper top and bottom that would stop the door. Anyway, I think I've pretty much covered all the aspects of fitting the magnet catches, so hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for the next one.